right now we're a team of four. All of them are part-time. Everybody's working for equity. All our costs for over a year of operation, and with two MVPs being built, one mobile and one web app, it's been like $10,000 that we spent, including legal costs. It's all about connecting all the dots and make sure you've exhausted every resource before you say, we can't do that.
Hello and welcome back to Off to the Valley, where we go beyond the headlines to explore bold ideas, human stories, and turning points behind the startups shaping our world. I'm your host, Pratik Panda, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Jane Fisher, former journalist, communication strategist, and now founder of Immi, an AI-powered platform helping immigrants navigate life in a new country. After moving abroad herself, Jane saw firsthand how overwhelming the whole process can be and decided to build the kind of support she wished existed before. From simplifying housing and healthcare to creating real community connections, Immi is turning experiences into real world impact. Jane, it's amazing to have you on the show. I'm, for one, very excited to have this conversation because as an immigrant myself, I've moved and lived in three different countries apart from my home country, and I can totally understand how challenging it is. So let's get to know more about you.
The pleasure is all mine.
Okay, let's start with a little bit about your background, right? Tell us what your childhood looked like, um, anything that helps us understand Jane better.
Well, I always say I have a very mixed up and messed up cultural and national identity because if you know the term third culture kid, which is the term that relates to people that were brought up or partly brought up in a country different from their parents' origin, and therefore their mentality is different. Basically, that's me. That's the definition of me. I was born and raised in Japan, and obviously I don't look Japanese, and that's because my parents come from the USSR. They were born in what now is Russia, and their parents come from all over Eastern Europe. And then I was born and raised in Japan in this quite a social greenhouse environment, because in Japan, I don't know if you know much about it, but it's not really an immigrant-friendly culture. It's friendly to foreign influence in a way, but it never fully absorbs it, and so you can never really become a part of that society. So clearly, I didn't integrate. And then for studies, I left abroad, so I studied in the UK, and I also moved around in different countries quite a few times. So when people ask me where I'm from, I always say, I'm not quite sure, really. I identify myself as a Londoner these days, because at least that's where I don't feel like an alien, because there are a lot of people with a journey similar to mine.
It's an interesting thing that you said at the end, right? I don't feel like an alien. And that's truly one of the biggest challenges as immigrants. We get into an environment where we are finding to feel or finding this comfort of home. So that the search for home continues as you move from one place to another. What encouraged you to start Immi, and what are you doing for other immigrant who are trying to sort of move to other countries?
Well, I think I've always been quite a philanthropic person, as in it always brings me joy to help others. For many years, I guess I didn't think of it as an option for my career. And then during the pandemic, I was no longer working in journalism. I transitioned to first production, then digital content, then I was working in a tech company by then. The job title was called marketing, but it all lacked purpose. And then during the pandemic, I started meditating. I started just, I guess, reflecting more on like where do I actually want to end up, what I want to look back on in 10 years' time. And suddenly it just occurred to me that, well, actually, serving others through pursuing my own ambitions is what seems most exciting to me. This is what actually brings that spark inside me for life. So I thought at the time that I needed to search for opportunities in global humanitarian organizations such as the UN. And I nearly succeeded securing a job in not in UN, but one of the UN partners, one of the global humanitarian organizations. But at the same time, I was choosing between that offer and an offer from a no-name small health tech startup, which was aiming at helping patients with cancer worldwide. And even though it was counterintuitive to decline that offer from a global name, from a community organization, for some reason, I just felt like I needed to go in the direction of startups. And so that's how I ended up in social impact and impact technology. And then, well, as it usually happens, well, not usually, but statistically quite often happens with startups, an idea may be brilliant and the mission, you can love it, you can live it, but only 2% make it, right? So our startup was not part of the positive statistics. And I was not a co-founder, I was a part of the team. So that was a very heartbreaking experience because in the startup, especially in the early stage, you really feel like this is a part of you, but you don't have enough force, enough say in the strategic business decisions. And so you're just forced to watch it burn, you know? So that brought me to the point when I realized that I needed to build something of my own. But I knew way too much about founder market fit by that time. So I knew that health tech is not quite the space for me to innovate in as much as I love it. So I thought, okay, where do I have enough experience and skills and understanding how to help people while also making it a business opportunity? And then I recalled some of my previous experiences moving countries, and one of the immigrant integration support systems that I went through in one of those countries that I lived in, which is great, but it's highly manual and not digital. And I thought, okay, why don't I try to digitize it, especially with AI, and scale it to the countries where it's not available? And that's how the idea of Immi was born, originally fully B2C focused, because I thought it's an individual problem. And then as I studied more of the micro and macroeconomic data on what impacts immigrant integration or lack of it has on economies, on businesses, on societies, on communities. And I realized how much of a B2G and B2B problem it is. It kind of shifts our entire concept. So we still have the B2C, not focus, but option as well. But to actually solve the problems we're striving to solve, we're now trying to make a case out of an institutional innovation, which is not there. And we have very little competition there because few people are so as crazy as to go to Gervis, especially now with an immigrant-oriented solution. But I don't know. I guess it's just like challenges. So here I am.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jane. Tell me a little bit about your MVP process and how you went about deciding what you have to exactly build, because you did talk a little bit about, hey, you started B2C and over time you learned that is potentially a better fit with B2B or B2G even. I'm guessing G, government in this case.
Yes.
Yeah. So what was your initial hypothesis looking like, and what are the steps you followed to sort of validate that idea?
So my whole plan for Immi, or what it should look like, relies on like real world system where you have a person, a coordinator who tells you where to go, what to do, which documents to bring, gives you reliable information on every step of your journey, connects you to verified service providers for anything like mobile network or banking or insurance, whatever, and introduces you to local communities. So what I envision is an AI-powered coordinator trained on content that can answer your question. Also, the content library, because you don't always know which question to ask, especially when you come into a completely different reality. And a marketplace of those verified providers, especially with filters like language they speak or who they founded by, because sometimes you want, say, a lawyer who understands the challenges of your specific passport, or you say you want childcare, like a nanny that speaks your language because the child is just too young to understand any other language, and so on. So that was the hypothesis, and the MVP that we built. I mean, we call it MVP, but it is a working product. It's just a fraction of our vision. It does have those features. Obviously, it's a very simple platform right now. It doesn't have all the personalization mechanisms that we're hoping to develop once the money is in, because the actual leverage of AI, I mean, the AI chatbot, it's just something that makes the user experience better. It doesn't have to be there. It's not the core part of the proposition. Our platform can live without it, but the actual benefit of such platform that would be something different from what exists. So there is, if we can ensure the fully personalized journey for each person. So that's where we need our own prepared proprietary algorithms. And that's not something we have in place right now, but that's in our roadmap.
Great. And, on your LinkedIn, you've shared recently about your experience also doing some consulting gigs to help extend the runway for me. And so how do you find balance between the two? And what are some tips that you can share with other founders who are very early in their startups and might be not fully ready to, I'm not saying that they're not ready to commit, but it can be a lot financially. So do you have any tips?
For sure, I'd say you should never underestimate how many ways there are out there to make things work and how many people want to help you without any money involved. I think that was a pleasant surprise. And like right now, we're a team of 4. All of them are part-time. I mean, for me, obviously, Immi is my main professional identity, so that takes up most of my time. Well, except for now, because I was in this very intense project for the last couple of weeks. But usually, Immi is what I do day to day. My co-founder has a day job. Our 2 other co-founders and team members, a developer and a product designer, they also have other projects, but they still help us. And like, none of us gets paid money. Everybody's working for equity. And if if you told me a couple of years ago that people would be working for me for free, I'd be like, A, I wouldn't want them to do that, and B, like, who would want to do that at all? But again, here I am. And, when you don't have a choice, but you do have people who are genuinely interested and they're happy to help you and that, moves the needle. That works suddenly. And that may not necessarily be an ideal thing. Like, obviously we don't have a super versatile dev team that would make the app of our dreams, but we're still able to make the working product and it works. And we're testing it with a B2B client right now. And we've got some B2G interest coming now. So fingers crossed we'll have a B2G pilots in a couple of months. Sounds surreal, right? Considering we barely spent anything so far, like all our costs for over a year of operation, and with 2 MVPs being built, one mobile and one web app, it's been like $10,000 that we spent, including legal costs. And so, yeah, that's just, so it's all about connecting the dots. I think that's the main job of the founder and the CEO, connecting all the dots and make sure you've exhausted every resource before you say, we can't do that. So yeah, that's the main thing. And in terms of balancing, well, there is never any balance, right? So for us, we've managed to keep our costs hyper lean, but the main runway for Immi, really, it's not the amount of money in our bank account, because there is still some money. It's more the amount in my bank account because I'm the CEO. So once I am forced to give up, it's just not going to live because I'm the bloodline of Immi. People usually come to me because they want to work with me. It's a blessing and a curse, but we have to live with that. And I just keep looking for ways to connect the dots. So right now it's summer, and in UK, it's the dead season. Everything is slow. So it is super annoying, yes, but also now is the time when I can feel less guilt about doing less for my startup and actually immerse as much as I can in my side projects, just earn that money right now on this hyper intense project. And then for another at least few months while we're navigating the fundraising and stuff, I will not be as stressed and forced to, look for new clients, onboard new client projects, which is always hyper resource intense. So yeah, I'd say, I wouldn't say my work week looks like the, 15-hour work days nonstop and no weekends. No, I still get time off. I still get time for myself. Is there a decent work-life balance? Probably no, because work is on my mind 24/7. But all I mean to say is it doesn't have to be as unhealthy as most LinkedIn influencers portray it.
Yeah, that's a good segue. I mean, one of the things I like to talk about with all my guests is, the founder journey is hard, even though on the outside it might sometimes look, beautiful. behind the scenes, there are a lot more challenging days than there are like easier days. And you've openly spoken about like founder burnout, mental struggles, and you've posted on your LinkedIn, and that's great. Like we need more people to be talking reality. So what are some routines or practices that you've employed in your life that helps you sort of navigate these situations?
Certainly therapy. Therapy is an essential thing. And again, I had a big break in therapist because I just couldn't find myself a new therapist because for a number of reasons, I lost trust in my previous therapy. Um, which happens. Sometimes you just outgrow your therapist at some point. So for a while, I didn't do any sessions, and then I resumed again in December when I had a really low point when my father was in the hospital and I lost a friend. Since then, I try not to skip sessions, even if I don't have much to rant about, just because it works like hygiene. Basically, it's best to clean everything up before it gives you trouble. So that's one thing. Also, something I openly speak about on my social media, and I feel like it's super important to raise awareness. I have a moderate mixed anxiety and depression disorder, which is like a medical condition, which may or may not require medicated therapy. It's always when it's a moderate stage, it's always at the discretion of the patients. And in my case, after having those really disheartening depression episodes, I chose to take medicated therapy because I know my life is not going to be much less stressful in the next year or two. Maybe later it will be, but not now. So if I don't want to, experience this paralysis from time to time and just spend a whole week being barely able to do anything, and again, being a lifeline of the company, you just can't really afford that. So I chose to opt for antidepressants. I started them in end of November last year, and it's been a huge game changer. I didn't have a single depression episode since then, and it does really help. So I think recognizing when you actually need a crutch and not being ashamed to take that crutch is an important part of the founder journey. It doesn't have to be medicated therapy. It may be, actually taking a full weekend off if that's what helps you restore, or it's keeping your hobby if that's what makes you, helps you keep your sanity. So always recognizing what your crutch is and keeping it. And one more thing that's both overestimated and underestimated at the same time, and you'll understand what I mean in a second, is meditation. Everybody is talking about meditation, how important it is. So that it's a subject of so many memes, on the social media. But actually, it's no joke. As long as you implement this instrument into your life in some form that works specifically for you, even if it's just 3 minutes per day, the cumulative effect of those practices is amazing. And like I'm always quite embarrassed about myself because I forget to meditate and then I don't keep this. And it's hygiene, right? So it's like brushing your teeth. If you forget to brush your teeth one day, nothing happens. 2 days, well, still nothing happens. But if you just keep consistently forget to do this, well, at some point your teeth are going to go bad. So same with meditation. When you do it every day, you become more stable, you become more balanced, and then you feel the difference. But after some time, you no longer appreciate that this is the consequence of you meditating every day. And because it doesn't hit you hard straight after you quit, you sometimes just skip it because, what happens? I'm just not going to meditate today. And because you don't feel the effect immediately, then you're not motivated to avoid skipping it again, and you're tempted to keep skipping it because you have other stuff to do in your evening. You want to talk to someone, or you want to go out, or you've come back too late and you just want to go straight to bed. But it does hit you hard, and if you want, once that cumulative effect fades away. So meditation is definitely my number one recommendation before even medicated therapy, because I strongly believe if I was consistent in my meditation, I would probably not have needed to go on antidepressants by now.
I can definitely vouch for that. I've been meditating for 18 years now and found a practice that I feel connected very strongly. And one of the things that people actually find it hard to believe, but I love it that you brought it up, is because if you see even on my LinkedIn or people who've worked with me in the past, a consistent theme you will see in testimonials and stuff would be like Pratik is always calm and composed and great to work with and whatever, right? And in the last 15 years, I've either always been a founder or a marketing leader for a startup where it's intense, right? You're responsible to drive leads and revenue and manage $1 million budgets and figure out how to spend money and all of that, right? It is stressful, but I feel like the only thing that has kept me calm and composed. And I use this example. There's this meme, very popular meme, where there's a dog sitting on a sofa and the house is on fire, and he's still sipping on like coffee or tea, whatever. I feel like that's always me. Like, the house is burning, but I'm like, okay, let me have my chai first, sort of attitude, right? We'll figure out a solution, right? And something will work out. But I feel like meditation is what has helped me be in that state. It's not that I don't get disturbed or don't get bothered. I think I'm able to now bring myself to that centered state much faster than I could in the past. Um, I love it that you brought that up because I feel like only people who've experienced it can truly say this, that, like it is an amazing thing. And I love your analogy about brushing because I've struggled to explain people why you should do this, and I think I'm going to use this analogy going forward. Um, but it's amazing, like you shared about the therapist, and one of the things that I could also immediately relate is you should see a therapist even when things are going great. Um, I think people wait too long to go meet a therapist when it's fine. Like you go whenever you feel you want to go, but there is no harm in showing up even when things are perfectly fine. Just like you, I used to think a lot of times, um, I'm not need to talk to my therapist today. Maybe I should cancel my call with her. But I even when I show up, something comes up and I'm amazed that we were able to use 45 minutes to talk about something that I had not thought of. Right. And um, I think it's amazing. And one thing probably I would also add is having some sort of a cheerleader around you. It could be a friend, it could be a mentor. As a founder in the past, you always tend to compare yourself with other founders who are way ahead in the journey. And that makes you feel like you're not doing as well. But we rarely do that compared to like whatever 98% of the startups that don't do well, right? You want to be in that 2%. There was a time when me and my co-founders thought we want to shut our company because we are not doing well. And this mentor of ours, we went to him to tell, hey, we are thinking about shutting the company. And he was like, why? Like, and he used to run an accelerator back then. And about 80 companies had graduated. And he was like, you guys are among the top 10 companies. You make revenue, you're sustainable. Like, it's okay if you're not able to raise money, but you're still able to survive and grow and be among the top 10 out of the 80 companies. What are you like worried about? And then that made us feel that, okay, yeah, I mean, we want to be that top 2%, but it's not all that bad. Like, so you need some sort of a cheerleader by your side to sort of make you see some reality. Um, and yeah, just make you feel a little bit better about yourself.
Yeah, no, true. As there are actually two things I wanted to add in terms of cheerleaders. I, for my personal vanity, I find it really helpful to find the like really high position cheerleaders, like those that you can actually trust. Because obviously your mom would always cheering you, but if it's
Yes.
someone that like if this person says what you're doing is shit, it's probably shit. But if this person doesn't say that, then probably what you're doing makes sense. So I think that helped me multiple times. And for therapy, I actually forgot to mention something that I think changed my life, something I learned just a few months ago. Once on Twitter, on Threads, I keep forgetting where it was. I found someone mentioning that EMDR is one of the most efficient therapies that many founders go for. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
I haven't.
So it's actually it's used mostly for PTSD, or at least it used to be used for PTSD, but it's actually got far more applications, and it basically helps you deal with how you're experiencing a specific negative emotion and physical projection of it in the moment, while also it may help you dig into the root cause of it, as in like what trauma, say in your childhood or later, was the first time when you felt it, and what impacted your perception of these triggers right now. And when you compare it to, say, psychoanalysis, when you keep on going to those sessions for years and years, and you keep talking about your childhood or your relationship with your family, and you're there like, why am I doing this? Why does this person need all this information? Well, that was my experience when I tried psychoanalysis. And it was hyper inefficient. And with the MDR, it's like one session, you walk out fully restored. I'm not joking. It's just like pure magic. And it actually helped me discover some root causes of certain ways I feel about my relationship with my employers in my actual romantic relationships or with my clients. How these things may be related to me. Wonder, apparently, a lot of those things come from specific to episodes in my childhood, which have nothing to do with my parents, because that's where the psychoanalysis therapists like to dig. It had to do with a very different thing. I had no idea that impacted me that much, but now I actually know where these huge behavioral patterns come from. So for the founders that like to be efficient with their time, who like to deal with their stress or whatever negative things we go through, for them to fade away in just one session, EMDR is just exactly what I would recommend.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I am definitely going to look it up. But, I enjoyed this entire conversation because we've been very open and brutally honest about all the stuff that's happening. And one of the things that you've also mentioned on your, maybe one of your LinkedIn updates was that you get a lot of inbound leads for Immi from these brutally sincere updates on LinkedIn. Uh, what does that look like in practice for you? And as a communications expert also, what would you advise other founders to do? Especially because a lot of founders that I talk to would say, I'm bad at LinkedIn. I would rather just, be focused on my meetings or meeting my customers or whatever. But they are not as comfortable starting to share things out on LinkedIn. What's the method or process that's been working for you?
I think for founders and CEOs, it's important to understand that LinkedIn is not distracting them from their work. LinkedIn is their work. It's a part of their lead generation process, especially if they hate sales and outreach, because, it doesn't replace sales and outreach, but it does make it much easier. I call LinkedIn branding a life hack for an introvert, because I'm an introvert. I don't like chasing people. I have to as a founder and CEO, but I prefer people to chase me. And when you're visible, when you build a personal brand and people reach out to you, that just helps you, well, at least deal with part of the problem of having to connect with people. So I would just say it's a mindset. It's just treating this as a part of your job, as a part of your networking, as a part of your outreach strategy. And in terms of how it looks like for me, so with LinkedIn branding, with putting yourself out there, there is a right way to do it. It's like a method. There is a methodology to do that from the marketing standpoint, and there is an incorrect way to do it, which is basically what I'm doing. I don't follow any marketing strategy. I know I could have had dozens of thousands of followers by now if I followed the playbook. And personally, nothing makes me more sick when I think of it. Because I work as a consultant in communication. I already have lots of content plans for my clients, although right now, but usually that's the case. And the last thing I want is to have another content plan for my social media. So for me, I just I don't remember if that was a specific point. But I just thought, well, it just doesn't work for me. I just want to be myself. I just want to be that brutally honest person who writes, um, just the way you think. So what I put out there on LinkedIn is exactly what I think and how I think. And I don't want to replicate someone else's thoughts. I don't want to hype on viral trends unless I actually have something to say about them. And I guess that works. I mean, yes, my audience is smaller than that of LinkedIn influencers, including some YC founders, but I still get a decent conversion of people coming to me for, I don't know, media outreach, or uh, people coming to potential investors reaching out to me, potential partners. So I basically get everything I want from LinkedIn. When I was more active as a consultant on LinkedIn, because now obviously my whole identity on LinkedIn is founder, I effectively destroyed my identity as a consultant there, which is great for my startup, but not great for my consulting business. But anyway, when I was more of a consultant, I got the consultant leads on LinkedIn. Now that I'm a founder, I guess all the leads that the founder wishes to see.
Are there one or two things that you can share for other founders? Like what are things they can do to be better at LinkedIn?
I think number one, like I said, well, what I already mentioned is that you change your mindset to not that it's an extra thing that you do in your free time, but rather this is a part of your job. Just allocate your actual time during the work to that. And so what helps is to actually book an hour in your calendar, say twice a week, for example, or more if you have the luxury to. And that hour, you just have to sit yourself down and do something for your LinkedIn, be it improving your profile or writing a post. And like, you just can't get um, out of your workplace. You can't rise from your desk until you finish that. So I think that helps, especially those with for those with ADHD brains. When your brain uses every excuse to get distracted and do something else. What else? Well, I guess I don't like all the advice about being authentic, because it's just like, what does being authentic mean? Um, I guess if it's not natural for you to write, then you just have to develop that ability. You have to develop that habit of reflecting in written form first. And for that reason, again, you have to book those time slots and you just try to write. And at first, your posts are not going to be perfect. So just post whatever you manage to burst out of yourself. So I'd say just acquire that habit first, not don't try to be perfectionist, and just keep trying and keep writing, and see how the world reacts. And even if you write something great, no one will remember it in a few weeks or even in a few days. Everybody has their own lives. Uh, so, um, so yeah, just stepping across that barrier, just forcing yourself to overcome that, to step out of your comfort zone. I think it's important. And that naturally makes you authentic as well, because if you go straight to ChatGPT and ask it to write posts for you, then that's what's going to be cringe, because everybody knows when a ChatGPT has written your post. And but also, I mean, ChatGPT exists for a reason. It helps you bounce back ideas. So if you're not sure how your specific experience or expertise can be tied to a post or to a specific trend, it's good to just have a chat with it. So not rather than asking it to write posts for you, you just dump your thoughts into it and see what it comes back with. And certainly you have to edit it manually, because again, ChatGPT has its very own signature words and punctuation, all of that. So you don't want that on your LinkedIn. But using AI when you can't do it by yourself without AI, it's perfectly acceptable. I personally never use AI for my Telegram channel, which I have. So it's like strict no AI place where I'm full unfiltered. I normally don't use AI for my LinkedIn posts, except for when I've written a very long post for my Telegram and I use LinkedIn and I use AI to just translate it, just because I'm too lazy to translate it manually. So I translate it and just edit out some things that I think are not working for LinkedIn, because they work great for my Telegram, but not for my LinkedIn audience. That's about the only use case I have for AI for my LinkedIn. I try to keep it away from the places where I'd rather be my own authentic self.
That's great. And I'll make a quick plug about this program called Ship 30 for 30. I did it maybe 3 years ago, and it's a 30-day program. Every day you put out a small post on LinkedIn. And when I did that program, I quickly realized how easy it is. Like, you really don't have to spend a lot of time to you do deep research about a post and so on. Like if you have the time, great. Having some structure is always helpful. But every day in the life of a founder, something happens that everybody wants to learn from, right? So even if you notice those small things and share those out, you can quickly build a network. But one of the things that I want to touch upon is, let's say everybody who's listening to this episode, they get really excited. They heard Jake talk about why LinkedIn is awesome. They agree that I need to spend more time on LinkedIn. It can quickly get demotivating when you're not seeing something come back, right? One thing we talked about is the follower count doesn't matter. I absolutely agree with that as well. I've worked with influencers who have hundreds of thousands of followers and it leads to no engagement. And I have worked with people who have 4,000 followers and it gives much better engagement. So end of the day, the quality of your audience matters a lot more. But what are some other things that you can sort of notice to continue to motivate yourself to be consistent, right? It's important to show up, to keep doing these posts over and over again. And sometimes it takes a while, right? What would you say to that? Right? Like, how do you keep yourself motivated to keep doing this?
Well, I think first of all, it's important to remember that growth on LinkedIn takes time. And so the first thing I would advise is stop reading all those posts from LinkedIn coaches about someone getting, I don't know, 50,000 followers in a week or earning, I don't know, $10,000 in one day after one post. There's always a statistical exception, right? So those things are not necessarily true because quite often there is far more work behind, targeted ads or a post was just randomly liked and shared by someone very famous with a huge audience, which is again, just a statistical exception. So I'd say stopping comparing yourself to those phenomenons and statistical exception is the most important step on this journey. And then secondly, just giving yourself specific time to test the hypothesis. Like that's the same thing you do with startups, right? You don't just push a product out there and after you haven't earned any money or haven't reached, I don't know, 100,000 downloads in a week, you don't just give up, right? No, you give it a specific time frame. You have to give yourself, well, I'd say realistically, you have to give yourself like 3 months if you've never really spent time on LinkedIn to just build up that audience and engagement and people who follow you and know who you are. With every new contact that you are building a relationship with through LinkedIn, you also have to like warm up those contacts, communicate and interact with them on the platform before you reach out with an ask. So that again takes time. That I usually try to give it like at least a few days if you at least met this person in real life. If it's someone you're reaching out to on LinkedIn, it's a big persona and you have a big ask, then give it at least 2 weeks or maybe even more. And then if you're looking for leads, I normally, when I talk to my client, especially if they're doing something from scratch, I always say, well, look, I would realistically give it 6 months to really start tracking the leads coming in. There is no, like, if we get them in earlier, great. But unless you have a budget of a Coca-Cola or you just pour your money into target ads while at the same time consistently give out discounts and also your product is actually something everybody wants, it's just not going to bring you leads.
That's great advice, Jane. Thank you so much for sharing that. As we come closer to the end of the recording, I want to ask you a few lighter rapid fire questions. So if you're ready, I will shoot the first question.
Sure, go on.
So, what's the one app on your phone that you can't live without?
Oh, I'd say Telegram.
Yeah. Your go-to comfort food when you're missing home.
It depends on where I am. If I'm in the UK, I'd say I got quite addicted to chicken tikka masala. When I'm visiting my mom, then especially when it's summer, when I'm visiting my parents, it's lots of berries, like any berries, kilos of berries. That's the comfort.
That's awesome. If you weren't building Immi right now, what do you think your career path would look like?
I think I would be working in humanitarian organizations. I actually did work as a consultant with WHO for a while, part-time. So maybe I would have been full-time in this big nonprofit organizations.
Amazing. What's one sort of learning or advice that you've received as a founder that you relate to the most?
It's one advice. I think it's the fact that you really have to be burning with what you're building. And I know it sounds cliche, but well, it's actually true.
Mm.
Because when everything else fails, if it's still something that you want to work out and that's something you want to look back on in 10 years' time, thinking I did that, then everything else is manageable.
That's awesome. Any book or podcast or person that has recently inspired you?
Well, I'm not much of a podcast person. As for books, one of the recent books that I read that I really liked, it was given to me by my friend, actually, who's a huge fan. It's Atomic Habits. I think that's pretty powerful. But I'd rather talk about the person that inspires me. I would say I have a professional crush. It's the person that builds a medical startup which has a mission of making healthcare accessible to at least 43 percent of people in the world. Like that's basically the goal of SDG in healthcare. I think so. His startup is called Reach. Oh no, it's not 43. It's Reach 52. So it's 52%. And they are a hybrid model of a startup with nonprofits, and they are delivering both tech and institutional innovation and pushing through barriers to make healthcare available to those who used to die from curable diseases. I myself volunteered in a charity that does exactly that, just in a different way. I have huge admiration to someone who decided to have their life with a goal like that, and does it for many years and does it successfully. So
That is
he's my
amazing.
deep professional crush.
And thanks for sharing that. I am always fascinated with mission-driven startups that can make a huge impact. So thanks a lot for sharing that. Jane, one last question before I let you go. What do you see is the future of Immi, and what are some things that you are looking forward to?
Well, my personal goal is simple. As long as something like Immi, or if everything goes well, Immi itself, makes a lot of people happier, actually helps a lot of people. That's the most important thing for me. I mean, obviously, it would be nice to make it work as a business and earn some money from it, but morally, I'm prepared to having Immi as the main identity of myself, at least for the time being in my professional life, but not necessarily being the main source of income. Again, if it becomes one, great. But if we do reach 500,000 people in the next 3 years, as we strive to, according to our projections in Pitch Deck, then that'll be amazing.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Jane, for taking our time and talking to us. So many insightful things that have come up in this conversation. I really appreciate you taking out the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that wraps up today's episode. Before we sign off, I would like to thank you for your support and thanks for tuning in. If you loved today's episode, then don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and never miss an episode. Be kind, be happy, challenge the norm. I'll see you folks again for the next one.